Welcome to Run, Build, Grow, the podcast that laces up its running shoes and dives deep into the heart of the communal spirit of running. I'm your host, Andrew Ware, the RunninRev, and I'm thrilled to take you on this exhilarating journey where we explore the stories that go beyond the pavement. As we move into our episode today, I am joined by just a great friend of mine, a longtime friend of mine, Katie Wax White, who is running in Atlanta, Georgia. She joins Atlanta Track Club, but she is not those professional, elite, sub-elite Atlanta Track Club members. For those of you who may be familiar, she is your everyday runner, joining what is this massive group, but also experiencing community through it. And in this episode, Katie and I unpack her running journey, what has gotten her to this stage, and what has helped her as she sees this newness in the life of the running community that she is a part of by running with Atlanta Track Club, running with her husband, running with her dog, just getting active out there, and how she has come through these injuries that have happened through high school, college, into adulthood, and what it means for her running journey now. So let's dive in and let's get Katie and hear her story. All right, welcome in. How you doing today, Katie?
I am fantastic. We are recording this on a Friday, so I'm glad that it's a Friday and excited to go into the weekend.
Yeah, and I don't know how things are down there in the deep, deep South, but here in the not South, where we apparently are in Virginia, it is already 1,000 degrees. So I can't imagine what is going on down there in Georgia.
Yeah, it says it's like 85 degrees, but it feels like 100 outside. It feels pretty miserable. So already there in June, and I'm worried.
Just got to run in, but got to shower before we hopped on to just get the sweat out of everywhere. But, as much as the folks listening to this podcast are runners, they probably don't need to hear about our unbearable summer conditions that most of them are probably also dealing with. But let's start this out, Katie, as we get going. What is your community and why is your community awesome?
So my community in my life, my running community has changed and evolved as I've gotten older. I began running when I was in middle school. And so my running community was the track team. And then in high school, I did track and cross country. So it just kind of bloomed and blossomed into a multitude of things. And then I'm sure we'll get into it later, but I had multiple hip surgeries and took time off from running for a very long time, was told for a while that I was not going to be able to run ever again. And miraculously and wonderfully and by amazing modern medicine, I have been able to run. And so I currently am located in Atlanta, Georgia, and my running community is the Atlanta Track Club, which is absolutely phenomenal. My husband and I joined the Atlanta Track Club beginning in January of 2024. So we're still kind of newbies. We were running together in the beginning. So I would say first, like my community is my husband and my dog, where we run together a lot. We love to move our bodies together. It's something that we like to hold each other accountable. He is training for the Detroit to Canada Marathon, and I am not. And I will never have any aspirations to do a marathon, but I am supporting him in that marathon journey, helping him, fueling his body with food and electrolytes and hydration along the way. But the Atlanta Track Club down here, located in Atlanta, is a really cool group, in a large group that meets at breweries along the Beltline, which is a trail that goes all around it will be almost completely all around the city of Atlanta. And so we meet at different breweries, and they say you can, if you walk, if you run, whatever kind of body movement that you do today, we're just glad that you joined us. The group is going to go a max of 4 miles. Here's a route, follow on Strava if you have any questions. And so that community has really changed running for me, because for running for so long was so competitive and was about time, was about going fast. And it has been an opportunity to reframe my mindset. So there's some days where I really do not have any energy to run. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to bring Georgia and we're going to do some like walk jog and it's great. And then we meet other people who are doing a walk jog with their dog too. And then it's a cool community to just say like, yeah, today I'm just not on the level of going 4 miles. But other people in that community do, use that time on that Thursday at 6:30 to do a tempo run, to knock out 4 miles, to set a time, to really lock in and use that as a pivotal point in their workout week. Whereas I feel like what makes my community awesome is I can come at whatever part of I am in my week, and I can be me, and I can do me, and I am still supported by a community that is excited to encourage one another and to be alongside of one another.
Yeah. And I think when a lot of these listeners are hearing Atlanta Track Club, there are some preconceived notions going into that. Because Atlanta Track Club is not your run of the mill track club like we might experience here in Virginia. It's a multi-level track club that involves local sort of, what would you call them? Almost hobby joggers. It involves semi-elite, and it even involves professional runners. It involves race organization, not just any race organization. Atlanta Track Club sponsors and puts on the Peachtree Road Race that happens every year on July 4th, one of the biggest 10Ks in the country.
It's going to be hot.
And so, you and your husband, Asti, are entering this scene that, for I think a lot of folks, can be very intimidating because it's multi-layered in that, you are just one of the people who are there, and you're not one of the professionals, you're not even one of the semi-elites. You're just folks out there, getting the miles in, doing this for healthy living. But it's also, one of the bigger clubs in, probably actually the biggest club in the Atlanta area. So what has it been like for the two of you getting involved in Atlanta Track Club, and what does it look like, with myself knowing a little bit of the background of Atlanta Track Club, to insert yourself into one of sort of the smaller areas in Atlanta Track Club, to start to get involved and to make this a regular part of your life. And for reference for listeners, Katie and I have known each other since we were kids. Katie has no problem making friends at all. It is one of her gifts in life. But I still find it interesting because it is one of these big track clubs. So what has it been like for you and Asti to kind of become a part of this community?
Well, I'll start off with a little anecdote story. We joined in January because Asti signed up for the Detroit Candidate Marathon. And so we started looking at different run clubs, and he's originally born and raised from Atlanta. So he knew the Atlanta Track Club, and he's like, hey, how would you feel about paying a membership? You don't have to pay a membership to be part of the run club, but how do you feel about, getting some swag, having some, first opportunity signing up for the Peachtree Road Race? And I'm like, yeah, okay. I said I was going to support you in this marathon endeavor. I'm just running to enjoy running right now. So if it gets any sort of competitive or comparative, that's not going to be a healthy place for me. And so we joined January, we went to the first, it was January 7th or something like that. And it was cold. It was pretty frigid, and there was a large group. And it was really, I was we're walking around, we're walking up to this brewery, and they're like, hey, scan the QR code to check in. And we're like, okay, we're checking in. So, we scan the QR code. They're like, hey, are y'all new? We don't recognize your faces. What are your names? And so we shared our names, and they're like, well, welcome. And I thought that was really cool. And that was a moment that I knew that this was going to be a unique community. Even though Atlanta Track Club is large, it is really awesome to see that they still recognize a new face. And they're willing to show you the ropes and to introduce you to an ambassador and to make sure that that there's a bag drop here, and that you can keep your keys and your water bottles here, and to sign back in, and you get a raffle ticket, and you get some potential opportunity to get some cool swag. And that was when I really realized wow, this is a cool community. This could be slightly overwhelming, but this could also be a great opportunity for accountability. And that is something that I've seen. And as we've progressed along, sometimes Thursday nights don't work out, but there was one night that I wasn't feeling well and Asti went and they're like, hey, like your wife didn't come this week. And he just kind of looked at the person like, yeah, like she's not feeling the greatest. And so he comes home and he shares this. And I was like, they know who we are. So there's still weird moments of that, like, wow, this really large group that puts on a multitude of events throughout the year, has a large breadth and net of people who come and who are part of this community. They still know who we are. And that is important for community. And I think that's what makes Atlanta Track Club still unique, is that they recognize that there are people, like they recognize their people. And then, they encourage you to sign up for different races, or you're running with some people and they're like, oh yeah, I signed up for this 5K. Like, have you heard about this 5K? Or, oh, I'm doing this. Like, do you run races, or do you just run for fun? Like, and it's even though there are professionals that are there at the 4-mile runs on Thursdays, like doing their times locked in, there's still an aspect of just being a human runner and being a runner. And that point of connection makes me realize that this is not a competitive, comparative group, that everybody can come as who they are, no matter what you're experiencing, what you're feeling in life. You can just enter and be you. And that's what I love about that community. And that was what really I thirsted for.
And knowing you, I imagine that a lot of that comes from the running journey that you have been on and what has gotten you to this point in life. And so looking at your feelings coming into Atlanta Track Club, let's back up to, high school Katie and, kind of revisit some of that part of your life that leads into it. And I don't know that knowing you, I would say there was necessarily that the competitive nature wasn't something you appreciated when you were there. But I think it's more so what has transitioned in how running has become something appreciative for you. So if you could take our listeners through sort of where you were in high school, what you were doing in terms of running, and then how the transition came to be that you've come to this place where there is more of a gratefulness for the movement. I mean, you mentioned it up at the top, the injury, but going into more depth about that of, what has brought you to this gratefulness for running, and walk the listeners kind of through this history that you've had.
Yeah. So like I stated in the beginning, I started running track back in middle school. My mom was an avid runner when she was growing up, and she ran track competitively and track and cross country competitively. So it's kind of in my blood. And I used to race my brother around the pond and used to beat him every single time, and it would just boil his blood. And so like my parents kind of knew that I was instantly like, oh, we got a runner on our hands. And so I got plugged into middle school track, and they looked at me and they looked at my body and they're like, oh, you're a long distance runner. And I was like, okay, like I didn't know anything about distances. And so when I went to high school, I originally was kind of teetering on the fence, like, do I do cross country? And I decided to opt out. I didn't do cross country my freshman year, but I decided to try out for outdoor track my freshman year. And the track coach at the time was very old school. And I will remain from cussing on this podcast and keep it family friendly.
Oh, don't worry. I'll put an explicit sign on if I need to.
I mean, you had to do that with. I'm just a hard ass and had his ways, and you had to meet your times. And if you didn't meet your times, you're going to get cut. And so trying out for outdoor track was a different level. I was like, wow, is this really what high school track is? Like, you need to run a mile within, 8 minutes. Like, oh, you need to run a mile. If you want to compete, if you want to be in track meets, then you need to run it in 7 minutes. And I went to Grassfield High School, a very great, phenomenal athletic school in Chesapeake, Virginia. And we had some bomb athletes. I mean, we had some fast runners. We had runners go D1, go pro. I mean, these runners in Virginia are kind of known. There's a history of runners in Virginia. But really growing up and being a freshman and seeing these really good girls, but they were also toothpicks. And I wasn't a toothpick. Like, I've always had thicker thighs. I rode horses. Like I didn't fit that like quote runner mold. And so I tried to fit that mold. And immediately into my freshman year running outdoor track, I had a bulging disc. I had a back injury. And the back injury took me out. And I only ran one track meet my freshman year. And it was terrible. It was absolutely horrendous. I came in last place and I knew I was going to get cut from the track team. So I rehabbed, tried to build it up, got better, got stronger, and tried out for indoor track my sophomore year. I was still dealing with some injuries and had some problems with my back. And so I was involved in the training program, and they were like, hey, like, let's get you connected to an athletic trainer. And so this athletic trainer ended up doing a lot of physical therapy work with me and got me plugged into a really good physical therapist. And so I learned the importance of body movement. I learned the importance of slowing down and really breaking things down on a muscular level. And that was really critical for me into what was then to come. So I got healthy. I ran indoor track my sophomore year, ran outdoor track. Still wasn't the best. I was kind of that middle of the pack runner or middle to end of the pack. I kind of just ran, like I had my own paces. I was competitive, but I knew I would never be that top girl. And I knew that 5:30-minute mile was never something I would hit, or the 5:15-minute mile was something that I would never hit. And that was something that I kind of just came to terms with. And I think that was just because of my injury from my freshman year. And so I was okay with being that middle of the pack runner. I was okay with whatever track meet that I ran, whatever PR that I hit, and things were great. And then my competitiveness ramped up when I started cross country my junior year. There was something about cross country that I loved. I loved running on grass. I loved not having to run in a circle. I loved the opportunity of knowing that there was 1 through 7. And if you placed in the top 7, like, each player could get a point. And so I loved that team environment versus what the lack of team felt like in track, if that makes any sense. And so in cross country, I got very competitive. I started ramping up my mileage. I would go on long runs for 10 miles. I loved the long runs. I realized this was really when I started loving distance. And I wasn't just that mile runner. I was really that 3-mile runner, that 5-mile runner. I loved getting into the distance because I would joke with my coach, I would have to run longer than the race that I would run to get warmed up. So I would have to go out and run 3 miles before I would run my 2-mile race. And, my 2-mile ended up being my sweet spot for track. And that was good that I found my little niche. But it was something about cross country knowing that, okay, I have this many miles, and I started calculating, okay, how can I do a negative split? How can I, if I start and pace myself out at a 6:45-minute mile, for the first mile, then I can negative split on the hills and I can go 6:30. And then if I can push, and I just start, like, that was when the competitive animal started coming out of me. But then it was also the aspect of pack running. So how can I pack run? Like, how can I kind of start in the back, but then catch up and pack run with my peers, and we push each other all the way through the end. So my competitive side really fueled through cross country, and I was healthy and I felt phenomenal. I felt like I looked my best, and then everything kind of came to a crashing halt. My senior year, I was getting looked at by some colleges to come run for their programs, and my times were not the top. I was not a 5:15-mile girl. I was not that, but I was still hanging in that low 6s range, which was good. I never thought I would ever get to that. And I was in the middle of cross country season, and we were getting ready to run our conference, like semis or whatever. It was like the last conference event. I started having some discomfort, and I couldn't really pin where the discomfort was. So I with my previous back injury, took some time off, went back to the PT, took it easy. And then I will always remember the day. It was December 8th of 2015. I was running an indoor track at CNU. I was running the 2 mile. I was excited. I was my best fit self. I was so ready to hit, high 11s, low 12s. I had the goal for going out and qualifying for regionals. I had taped up the qualifying times on my mirror. I looked at it every day. I knew the splits that I needed to have. I knew everything that I needed to do in that run. And the 2 mile in indoors is 16 laps. And I was on lap 12. So I'd gotten through a good portion of the run, and I heard a pop that changed my life forever. I thought maybe it was my back, but it caused so much pain that I was in the front of the pack, and all of a sudden, next thing I know, like, I'm dropping back, and I can't run. I've lost my form. I've lost my speed. I've lost everything that had gotten me to that moment. And I was really just so perplexed what happened. And so one of my best friends at the time encouraged me to keep running. Like, you got it. You're really, really close. Like, you only have a couple more laps to go. And I pushed through. I somehow finished the race, and I collapsed at the finish line. And so coach and athletic trainer picked me up and took me to the table, and we realized I had dislocated my hip. And they had never seen anything like that before. I mean, normally you see it in the jumps and you see it in something like that, but for a long distance runner, you don't see somebody absolutely dislocating their hip.
Yeah.
So that started a very, very long journey. I had my first hip surgery in March of 2016. After the injury, all the offers to run were taken off the table. I was known as the risk. Like, nobody really wanted to take a risk on a long distance runner who had hip issues, and it was so unheard of for a young person, a young female, to have hip issues. And nobody within Virginia Beach, nobody, like, we really struggled to find care or somebody to see me, a doctor to see me. We finally got into a doctor at Children's Hospital of the King's Daughter in Norfolk. And she did a surgery, and I will never badmouth her. She tried, but it failed. And ultimately, she didn't quite know what she was doing. It was her first hip that she had ever seen of that. She thought she had the experience, and simply didn't. And so I was back in her care 6 months later, trying to figure out what was going on, trying to see if they could sew it up. And what led us to that was the time in PT, I was not getting stronger. I was still having moments of popping and dislocating. And so I just couldn't get healthy. And she looked at me at the end of the second surgery, and she's like, "Katie, I don't know if you'll ever run again. I don't know if you'll ever run again. I don't know if you will be able to have children. I don't know if you will be able to have a good quality life. I don't know what to really say to you." And those words stuck with me. They really created a journey of sadness and of hatred of running. I was so angry at running. I didn't understand how running could hurt me as bad as it did. I lived in so much pain. From 2016 to 2018, I was on crutches for about 2 years, on and off. It was to the point where there were days where I couldn't even put on some pants because my hip was so swollen, and it was so, like, I could not get it to be back in the socket. And so luckily, finally found a doctor at University of Virginia who was willing to see me. And so that journey of 2016, 2018 meant I was doing physical therapy 3 times a week. I was doing whatever I could to get it strong. I was strengthening other parts of my body. I was strong. I was one strong girl. I could still lift. I couldn't squat, but that was really hard. There were movements that I couldn't do, but I knew that I was strong physically, but I wasn't strong mentally. And I started my journey at Randolph-Macon College. Randolph-Macon does not have a running program. I was told that I could potentially ride horses, which was my first love. And so I started riding horses, but then in 2018 was really the moment that I couldn't handle the pain anymore. I started having pseudo seizures because my body had met its pain threshold. I was trying so hard to do all of the things. I was working out, I was trying to run, I was riding horses. Like I was so scared the moment that I would stop that my whole body would deteriorate. And that's what my body basically did for myself. And so I started having pseudo seizures, and Andrew came in and was there for that moment. And it was a terrifying time in life, not really knowing what was going on with my body. And so I finally got under the care of a phenomenal surgeon at UVA who saw me for my 3rd left hip surgery. And Dr. Frank Gwathmey, I tell him I always owe my life to him because he gave me the hope that I could do something again. He said, things may be different. You may not be that 6-mile runner anymore, but I want to promise you that you will be able to do some body movement at some point without pain. And I was like, okay, we get into surgery, and after surgery, it was an 8-hour long surgery. We get out and he shares with my parents that it was the worst hip he had ever seen. And I was 20. I was young. It shouldn't have been that bad. And he shared that he was not able to fix me, but that he was going to present on my hip, and that he would find me a doctor and a surgeon who was willing to do whatever it took to get me to have some sort of quality of life. Because that was all that it was at that point. It wasn't to get back to running. It wasn't to ride horses. It was to have a quality of life where I wasn't on crutches all the time, and where I could eventually be the Katie that everybody knew I was, because I wasn't myself. And so eventually August 2018 came around, and we get a call, and it's from Duke University, and it says, "Hi, we've received your information from Dr. Frank Gwathmey, and this is Dr. Mather's office, and we would like to get you in for a consultation regarding your left hip." And I remember my parents and I just kind of being in shock, like, this is the moment? Like, what? Like, we finally get the call. And so we went down to Duke. We got in as soon as possible. That first visit, Dr. Mather sits there and tells us that I would be number 15 of his new hip reconstruction that he was doing through cadaver. And everybody else had been pretty successful. Everybody, so far, so far, everybody had been able to get back to a decent quality and a good quality of life. And he even looked at me and he said, "Katie, I can't sit here and promise you, but I do want to provide you hope that you will be able to move your body again." He said, "I want to say running. We don't know how bad things are. I know your history. You've had multiple surgeries, but I want to say you'll get back to some sort of body movement again." And so November 2018 came along, and we had a very, very long surgery. And afterwards, Dr. Mather looked at my family and he said, "I really do believe this surgery is going to change your life." And it did. I'm able to run. And I never thought that I would be able to do that. And through my journey, I wouldn't be here without the help of my college counselor who helped me through those multiple surgeries, my therapist who was just right there by my side through the midst of everything. I wouldn't be here without Dr. Mather, who really helped and refine a protocol to help me get back to a phenomenal quality of life. I thought for sure I would live with a limp or something, and I'm able to walk without any sight that I've had 4 hip surgeries. And I've had no issues since 2018 with my left hip. He did share in 2018 that most likely at some point the right would need to get done, but that we would let that just kind of take its time and not rush it. But if and when the moment arrives, we know what works and we know what is there. And then I attribute a lot of the journey to my family. My parents were my caregivers. They lifted me up the stairs. They refilled the ice machine. They moved the constant movement machine. I mean, the things that were required in rehab were so intense. That my family stayed by my side. And I had a phenomenal physical therapist located in Ashland who was not scared to take the protocol seriously and was willing to take it slow and remind me that taking it slow could restore me back to full function of my hip. And so I am so ever grateful for my care team. I ended up having to get the right hip surgery done in 2020. And that was just because I started feeling the popping and the dislocating and the discomfort that I had experienced before. And I called Dr. Mather and I was like, hey, I think it's time. He's like, all right, you ready to schedule? Just because we knew where we were. We knew with my experience, if we prolonged it, the danger that it would do to my body, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And so we were able, the moment that elective surgeries were allowed to happen in 2020, which was December, we scheduled that. We got on the books, and that has been fully reconstructed as well. So he's reconstructed the labrum and the capsule on both of my hips and shaved down the bone spurs, and believes that I should be, living a full and healthy life and not needing to have any surgery ever again. And that was the biggest thing that he proposed versus doctors proposing a hip replacement, was that I was so young, that I was most likely going to have 3 or 4 hip replacements in my lifespan. And that's not sustainable. For somebody who moves and likes to do as much as I do, they're like, yeah, no, you're not really a candidate for it. So I'm ever grateful for Richard Charles Mather III at Duke University because he really truly knows the research and knows what has to get done and does phenomenal work. And the journey is not easy. I mean, we recently spoke due to recent life events. I wanted to check and make sure that things were good with him, and he shared that with the work that I've done, with the physical therapy, with the strength training, that I have the tools in my toolbox, and that once you get the tools in your toolbox, you know where to go. You know that sometimes you need to have those strength days instead of running days, and it's phenomenal to me that I can still run, and that is the blessing, because I love it so much. It fuels a part of my body that nothing else could ever fulfill. I tried the swimming, I tried the walking, I tried the biking, and nothing else could ever compare to what running is. And so my journey really truly speaks to the ability to be resilient in the midst of injury, because it is truly a journey that tests every bit of you and your capacity to be able to face struggle. And so I'm thankful for my care team, my family, and the ability to fully recover.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of people listening to that story, yours was a longer journey that took place over the course of many years. And, for folks listening, if you haven't listened to it, I'd invite you to go back to Caitlin Kirchhoff's story just a few episodes ago, where we talked about sort of, those moment by moments, those big injuries that kind of begin to define your, not, we don't call it career, but your journey as a runner, and what happens. I definitely define a lot of my journey around my ACL surgery in 2012, and especially around my left knee. It's the one that gives me the most trouble. It's the one that, last year walking up steps at annual conference got hyperextended, and, really began this whole new journey of just all sorts of crazy stuff that's happened. And so what I appreciated in hearing your story and lifting up for a lot of folks to really see is, when we talk about run, build, grow, we think about it needing to take place in that order, right? I run, everything gets built, and then things begin to grow. But sometimes, especially when it comes to sort of the way that community supports around us for our ability to run, and the way that you've highlighted all of those different people along the journey, and in both good ways and bad ways, because I think that we can see how even people who may have negative impacts in our lives, they're still a part of our journey, and they're still a part of how we've come to run. And so, you kind of look at backing up to the beginning of the episode when you talked about community and what makes your community awesome. It's not just the community that you're in right now, right? It's not just Atlanta Track Club. It's not just your husband who's supporting you now. It is not just the way that your family supports you now, but it is every step of the journey, how people have been in there. And so as you're making this return to running over the last, 5-6 years, and of course it's been slow, right? We don't just, you don't finally get your hip fixed. You don't finally get your hip fixed, and then you go out and you run 5 miles, right? Because that's what stupid people do. And that's what podcast hosts who lead podcasts on running do, because they're impatient.
You do.
But as you're looking at this return to running, and whether it is the doctors and medical teams, whether it is your family, whether it is your PT, I can't remember if you had to do OT along with the PT or not, but all of these people are coming around you. You've talked a little bit, but what does it mean then as you're now in this phase of, you're full on running now, right? It is, you're running 3, 4, 5 miles. You're signing up for fun races. You're enjoying time on the run with friends. As you look back on that, what does it mean to you now as you're celebrating these new and these different milestones in life?
Yeah, I mean, you spoke it spot on that it requires you to sometimes build and then grow and then run. And it requires you to take those steps. And something that I speak to when I talk to fellow runners, or I hear they're going through injury, I'm like, hey, don't rush it. Like, as much as you want to get back to being able to run those 3, 4, 5 miles, enjoy the half-mile walk. Celebrate that body's movement. Enjoy the spurts of, jogging for a minute and then walking for 3. And that was something that my care team and my support team really influenced and kind of beat into my head, that they're like, if you go 100%, or as I like to say, if you go balls to the wall, you will hurt yourself again. You will ruin all the work that was done, and you will be back at phase 1. And we can't guarantee if you go back to phase 1 that you'll be able to get to 100. And that's the tough reality living in that moment of injury, saying, I gotta take a minute. I gotta be mindful of my body. And what it's really taught me is I have to read my body. I have to know my body. I know my body when it's cold. I cannot go out and run more than 5 miles, no matter what. If it is cold, I cannot run more than 5 miles. I need to stay in that 2, 3, 4 range, and that's about it. Another thing that I'm not able to do that I celebrate is I can't run a damn hill. Like, you're talking to a former cross-country runner who used to run hills all the time. I cannot run a hill anymore. It's just physically.
I think you're living in the wrong city for that one.
It is, and I am living in the absolute worst city. Every 5K that I do, I look at, like, Austin looks back at me, and I'm like flicking him off. I'm like, this is the worst thing ever. Why am I living in Atlanta? I can't run these hills. Or I recognize, like, hey, I'm gonna lightly jog up this hill, and then I'm gonna stride down, and I'm gonna allow my body to stretch, and I'm gonna but I have to do the pre-work and I have to do the post-work. I have to do the band work before I do the run. I have to, you have to take those baby steps before you take that next step. And also, for me, running right now is not about time. I could care less if I run a 5K, in 30 plus minutes. I'm like, okay, I did it today. That's a victory. Like, that's something I never thought I would do. Anytime, and you mentioned doing fun runs. I'm wearing a Move for Grady shirt right now. It was a fundraiser for Grady Memorial Hospital. And we'd like to do 5 different runs and races that support our community. And so we've run the Move for Grady race. We ran the one in January was Run for Those Who Sleep in the Cold, Run in the Cold for Those Who Sleep in the Cold. So it was fundraising money for those experiencing homelessness. We've run the Old Fourth Ward 5K, which raises money for our local elementary. And it's one of those things where in those runs, I'm like, this is not about me. Like, this is not about me getting the fastest time. This is about me honoring and respecting my body, and then thinking about those who I am running for, and that I have the phenomenal blessing of now being able to run for somebody else. And I never thought I would be able to do that ever again. And so being able to run these fun races for Grady, for Old Fourth Ward, for Atlanta Mission really has prompted me to change my mindset on running, that it's not about me. It's about the wonderful blessing that I have to be able to run. And it's how can I now use my body to run for others, and to inspire others and to connect with others and to, share my story. It's taken me a while to share this story. It's a tough story. It's not one that has been easy to share. So I'm grateful to be in spaces and to feel loved, and secure in myself to share this story.
And along that journey, what has been the role that smaller goals have played? Because I think one of the dangers of that runners face when coming back from even sometimes the smallest injuries, but even more so from the catastrophic injuries, is we try to get too big too fast, right? You have an injury and it's like, all right, I want to qualify for Boston. Well, I mean, that is a huge goal. Instead of right now, I want to, walk, jog X amount of miles. I've noticed in the last couple of months that my running has gotten exponentially better because I have set small goals in this return to running. I started out with 2 weeks where I'm like, all right, 5-minute jog, 1-minute walk. That's what I'm doing. That is the goal. And I need to do it 4 times a week. That's the goal right now. Then it was 5 times a week. I need to run 2 to 4 miles. And now I joke because this is the first week I've taken the guardrails off, and I've kind of tried to get back and say, all right, here's my next new small goal. Right. And so this week it's like, all right, let's get back and let's try to do 20 miles through 5 runs during the week. And XYZ. So what role has made making the goals smaller? How has that helped you?
It helps me reframe my appreciation for then when I go on the run. Something that I have made part of my journey is strength training. We did strength training in high school. We did some strength training in high school. I loved lifting weights while running, but we didn't really focus on the isometrics. We didn't focus on the band work. We didn't focus on what it meant to fully stretch your body. And so the small goals to me mean that I got to put my pride aside. I got to say, even though I want to go out and do the run, these steps are how I can go out and do the run. And the small goals really were instated when I first went through my big hip surgery from the Duke doctor, Dr. Mather, in 2018. His protocol list, it was multiple phases. I think it was a total of 6 phases. And you had to complete every single phase fully to the whatever measurement or to this poundage or whatever before you could move on to the next. Every single one of them had to be complete. So the small goals meant like, hey, you gotta, posterior move your hip this way, interior move your hip this way. And if you couldn't go in, you're not ready to go to the next step and to add on the weight and to do this. And that's the reminder that I have when I go through the small goals. It says, you know what, Katie, like, if you cannot do X amount of clamshells without starting to feel your hip being a little questionable, then you're not ready for the run, because you're not then ready for the impact that you're going to take through the cardiovascular impact that your body's going to start feeling. You're not going to be fully, completely ready for that run if you can't do that small step. And it's hard. I mean, it really, truly causes you to say, hey, pride, I'm going to set you over here. Or, hey, I'm going to accept a little bit of this humility and say, you know what, I'm not ready. And that's okay. And your body tells you things for a reason. That's something that I've learned in this journey in setting small goals is your body will tell you things for a reason, and you're meant to listen to your body. Your body is your best expert, and your body will scream at you and will tell you when you're ready for the next step or when you're not.
Yeah. And that's not to say, I don't want people to hear that and think, okay, well, then I just don't need to make the big goals, right? Because what I want to remind folks, is that the big goal for you had always been to be able to run again. But the problem is that the mind space to only look at it as I want to run again, and this is something that I had to wrestle with, it was causing me to go about it in the wrong way. It was causing me to say, all right, I feel good. And to maybe not evaluate how good I felt, right? If I would have probably said it, I would have been about, maybe 70, 75% feeling good. And it's like, all right, let's go out and let's just, and I mean, I even tried to justify it. I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to go out and jog 3 miles. All right, I'm going to do it at like 10-minute pace, which is like, really far off of where I had been. But it's like, you just go back out and you jog those 3 miles. And it's like, and now I feel like crap. And so, I think it's important for us to not forget what the end goal is, but to not get lost in the end goal, because getting lost in the end goal causes us to not realize what we need right at this moment. I think about it all the time of the people, the Olympians who are putting like that Post-it note with, I'm going to win a gold medal, or I'm going to make the Olympics one day. And they put it like on their bathroom mirror. And then to hear them say, it's like, well, I mean, yeah, that's the end goal. But I mean, like right now, I got to do this like, 10 by 1K at, VO2 max pace. And if I don't crush this workout and I don't like put my mindset in this workout, then there's no way that I'm ever going to achieve that. And so, I mean, how important those small goals become when they're focused to be able to hit those smaller goals in that time frame. And they're not, you're not just putting everything in context of getting to this larger thing. I think it's great for people who want to qualify for Boston, but you're not going to qualify for Boston, by just going and running, the Detroit International Marathon. Sorry, Asti, like you're not going to do it first time out, brother. I'm telling you. But you're not going to do it, or even you're not going to do it by just, even if you do qualify in your first marathon, you're not going to do it by just stepping on the line one day and running, right? There's a lot of that smaller work that goes into it. It definitely looking at your journey, the role that those small goals have played, like you said, helps to realize where you are now. And even to take it back, I think, you say that that's kind of part of the reason of not really wanting to get competitive with it and wanting to keep it fun. And I often wonder how many of us who have had a moment where we've almost lost something that we love, that plays such a big role in us not wanting to like tarnish that in any way, shape, or form again. And what that might mean, it's, there's a time where you can care about the times. And I think for a lot of folks, we don't want time to be meaningless in a lot of these things, because I always enjoy pushing myself forward. I'm struggling with that right now, because it's like, man, I really want to go after like this sub 1.5 hour half marathon. But then I'm also just like, man, but I also just like, I want to pace people to like their own personal best. Like I had a lot of fun pacing one of my friends at Shamrock this last year, and to be able to do those kinds of things, I'm just like, what do I want to do right now?
Yeah.
And so I think it provides you a very humbling space to be able to take a step back and do that introspective, that inward work that we often talk about. All right, Katie, let's run through these end of podcast questions. What is your favorite distance to run?
I would say my favorite distance to run is a 8K. I like that it's the in between a 5K and a 10K. The 10K absolutely whooped my ass, but I get to the 5K and I'm done. I'm like, I still have a little bit more of the tank. So the 8K is like this good, happy, sweet spot. And I kind of love that like 5 mile range.
It also annoys the living heck out of people because 8K is like 4.97 miles. And so if you finish right on the 8K, people are like, why didn't you finish? I'm like, hey, I crossed the finish line.
Right.
All right. Well, what is your favorite thing? What is your favorite thing to eat post run?
Oh, tacos.
Yes.
Tacos. I have celiac disease, so I can't eat gluten. But corn tacos, anything on a corn taco. I just love a good taco. And I just feel like I can eat 6 of them and not even feel guilty. And just absolutely stuff my face. So tacos all day long.
Especially the small street tacos. Those things are like, I can take those things out in like,
I'm like, I take bites. 2 bites. So then, yeah, then I can have 6.
All right. And lastly, give our listeners a reason to go join their local run club.
I encourage you to go to a local run club because you will realize that so many runners are at different paces, are at different goals, and have different perspectives of running. And so anytime you are in a diverse environment of people who have different goals and different lifestyles, you are able to allowed to do the introspective work that we've talked a lot about today. You're allowed to say, hey, what are my goals? What are my small goals? What are my big goals? Am I here to find community and to find that opportunity to connect and to have a group know my name, or am I here for accountability? And sometimes those groups can offer all of that. Sometimes they're just some of those. And so I encourage you to check out a local run community because it will allow you to show that the running community is so big. I felt like it never used to be this big, and now it's just huge. And I feel like so many people are into running, and it's really awesome to just see so many people share in a passion and a similar love that you have. That I think all runners can attribute to, that running is not easy. And so you have a lot of shared ground, but then you also have diversity in everybody's goals and life and next steps of running.
What a great reason for us to get out. Well, Katie, thank you so much for joining today. This was great. Always good catching up. Hopefully you will make it up to the 757 soon and we can hang out. But you have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Oh man, what another great conversation. I just love being able to talk to folks. I love being able to hear their stories. I love being able to see how throughout their journeys, community has impacted them at every step, whether it's encouraging them to just stay strong, stay active, stay moving, or it is in another phase of life where you are now being pushed to do new things, to do amazing things, to do awesome things that you probably never thought you could do. And I think Katie's story goes a long way in helping us to see exactly what it looks like to kind of go through these battles, to go through these rough times. Again, kind of like Caitlin Kirchhoff's story of her last year. Katie's is exacerbated over a longer period of time, but we still see how different sections of support, different areas of support help to build her up and give her the confidence she needs to get back on the run, to get back to this active lifestyle. And now in this new phase of life, as she is in adulthood, as she is out working, as she is living married life, all of these things that she has refound this love for running, and not in the competitive way, but just in, I want to have fun. Even if we do like to look at times and go for PRs, I think that still needs to be the grounded place. And so I loved being able to have Katie in and to have this conversation and this story to explore it more. So again, I'm getting these folks recorded, I'm getting them edited, I'm getting everything together. So hopefully we get a more consistent schedule coming out this summer. I've got a bunch that I'm now have on the recording schedule, hopefully get them recorded. So be on the lookout for those as they are in the feed. Make sure that you are following or subscribing to this podcast on your favorite podcast listening app, or go find it at runbuildgrow.com/listen. There you can listen to the episodes right there on the webpage, as well as see some links to some of the popular podcasting apps if you want to be able to find it there. And that should take you directly over to the podcast on those apps so you can find it, subscribe to it, and make sure that these episodes, they're right in your feed. And while you're online, make sure to head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Those are two places where you can rate and review. You can either review on the episode in Spotify or review the show on Apple Podcasts. That just helps folks to know how much you're loving it. It helps me to know how much you're loving it and how much you're enjoying these episodes. And I'm making some revamps. Hopefully you saw it, but make sure to go over to blog.runninrev.com and subscribe to my Substack newsletter. Subscribe to the newsletter, subscribe to the blog, whatever you want to do. I'm going to be putting hopefully some more content over there, as well as making sure that you know when these episodes are coming out over there as well. And if you want to support all of this, I'm calling it the RunninRev Run Club. No running required, but if you want to help to support this run club, you can make a one-time or a monthly donation. Head on over to buymeacoffee.com/runninrev and drop a tip, a one-time. If you love this episode with Katie and you want to give an extra special shout out to her, or shout out to me for bringing you this episode, feel free to leave a tip, or you can become a monthly contributor to help to keep everything moving. If you read that Revamping the Substack, you'll see, I've been kind of teetering and tottering on what works and what doesn't work, but I still love to see it and create a space for you to support the podcast. And lastly, just help to share, help to get the word out there, show others in your running community and beyond. Help us all to grow on the run together. And remember, make every mile count.